In the late 15th century, Prince Vlad lives a calm life in Romania with his wife Elizabetha. He gives her a small music box as a sign of his affection. Their routine ends when knights arrive with orders for Vlad to return to war. He arranges for Elizabetha to be moved to another castle so she will be safe, and he asks the Pope to bless and protect her before he leaves. Elizabetha's journey is interrupted in the forest when her escort is attacked. A hidden archer kills 2 guards, and the remaining soldiers tell her to keep riding while they defend her. At the same time, Vlad sets up a barrier of fire using oil barrels to slow the enemy. The battle becomes violent, but his forces begin to gain control and defeat the opposing king. After the fight, Vlad learns that his wife has been ambushed. He hurries to reach her while she tries to escape through a forest filled with concealed bear traps. The traps kill 2 of her guards, and although she manages to avoid them at first, her horse is eventually caught and she is thrown to the ground. As she tries to get away, she triggers a trap. Vlad arrives shortly after and also loses his horse to the traps. He continues on foot, kills several attackers, and throws his sword at another soldier. The weapon hits the soldier but also strikes Elizabetha. Vlad reaches her as she dies. His grief turns to anger, and he confronts the Pope, insisting that God failed him despite his devotion. When the Pope cannot offer any hope, Vlad attacks him and declares that he will abandon his faith unless Elizabetha is brought back. A strong wind sweeps through the church, and a statue appears to shed tears as Vlad stands firm until his men remove him. Centuries pass. In France, a priest meets Dr. Diant at a psychiatric clinic. The doctor explains that a case in the facility has caused concern at high levels of government. They walk through the building while patients scream and struggle against their restraints. Behind a heavy door, they enter a chamber where a woman named Maria is held in chains. She is Italian and had been engaged to a nobleman related to the Queen of England. She had refused a church wedding, so the ceremony was planned at a family estate instead. When a bishop attended to bless the event, Maria reacted with sudden aggression. Her documents raise suspicion because they list her birth year as 1759, which would make her far older than any ordinary person. Maria wakes when the priest approaches. Her behavior and the fangs he sees in her mouth lead him to identify her as a vampire. He explains that vampires can move during the day but cannot endure direct sunlight. When he opens a shutter, the sunlight burns her skin. A crucifix also bursts into flame when placed near her. To test her response to blood, he cuts the finger of an assistant and lets a few drops fall on her lips. She reacts sharply to the taste. Examining her neck, the priest points out the bite marks that changed her. He says the church has fought creatures like her for generations but has never been certain of their origin. Maria whispers that her creator is the first of their kind and that he will soon arrive to reclaim the one he seeks. Later that night, a man named Jonathan travels through a dark forest. His carriage driver stops and refuses to continue because of nearby wolves. Jonathan is left alone with his belongings, a torch, and a crucifix. He continues on foot until he reaches a large castle. The gate opens for him and closes behind him, and another door opens inside, leading him deeper into the structure. He briefly sees a figure on a balcony during a flash of lightning, but the figure disappears. When Jonathan turns around, an elderly man stands behind him. The man lights the room and introduces himself as Prince Vlad, also known as Count Dracula. Jonathan sits down to eat while Dracula does not touch the food. As Jonathan looks through his papers, Dracula kills a rat and pours its blood into a cup before drinking it. Jonathan explains that the county he represents wants to purchase Dracula's abbey and convert it into a hospital. During the conversation, Jonathan drops the crucifix he was given earlier. When Dracula hears he is not a believer, he throws the crucifix into the fire and suddenly stands beside Jonathan. He tells him it is time to rest. Jonathan is taken to a room and warned not to go out at night. After Jonathan is left alone, the Count returns to the dining hall and fills the room with music. He then orders a stone gargoyle to watch over his guest. Jonathan grows curious and begins exploring. He finds an old book that records the castle's history. Inside, he sees an image of a young Vlad, but the section showing the prince has been torn out. Elsewhere, the priest meets Henry, who is Maria's fiancé. He reassures Henry that she is alive, although still struggling with the condition that has taken hold of her. Later, while looking through Maria's belongings for more information, the priest finds the missing page. It contains the portrait of Elizabetha. Back at the castle, Jonathan lets his curiosity guide him again. Late at night, he leaves his room and follows a faint light behind a door. He walks down a twisting staircase into an elaborate but unsettling underground chamber. In the center, he finds a coffin. When he opens it, he sees Dracula sleeping inside. The Count wakes and speaks to him moments before a gargoyle knocks Jonathan unconscious. Jonathan wakes up hanging upside down in chains. The gargoyles hold him in place while Dracula cuts his neck and lets the blood drip into a bowl. Weak and frightened, Jonathan asks how a creature like Dracula could exist. Dracula laughs and asks what Jonathan wants before he dies. Jonathan gathers his courage and asks to hear the Count's story. Interested, Dracula orders the gargoyles to let him down. Dracula explains that his suffering began on the day of Elizabetha's funeral. He says he has spent centuries mourning her, believing that a soul as pure as hers would eventually return in another life. His search was long and painful. During the Black Plague, many women died, and the survivors hid in churches where he could not go. He became isolated and overwhelmed by loneliness, to the point that he envied humans for their ability to die. In one moment of deep despair, he lay on Elizabetha's grave and slept. At sunrise, he attempted to end his life by jumping from a high window, but he survived. He tried again many times. His immortality kept him alive and trapped. Realizing he could not search the world alone forever, he began to develop a plan to draw her soul back to him. Over the course of a century, he created a fragrance made from rare flowers. When he tested it in Italy, women were drawn to him instantly. Its influence grew so strong that, at large gatherings, he could make entire groups move in perfect rhythm under his control. During his travels, he once believed he had finally found Elizabetha reborn. When he reached for the woman he thought was her, he discovered he was mistaken. The disappointment overwhelmed him. He realized that he had filled his life with constant celebrations and excess, but none of it brought the connection he wanted. In that moment, he gave up the search for himself. Instead, he decided to create others who would search on his behalf. During an elaborate party, he lost control of his hunger and bit every woman there, turning them into beings like him. Maria was one of them. After this, Dracula returned to Elizabetha's tomb. He broke open her coffin with his hands and found only ashes inside. Seeing only ashes in Elizabetha's coffin pushes Dracula into a deep breakdown. He decides he will never leave the castle again. From that point on, the gargoyles gather riches for him and obey every order, while the vampires he created search the world for the soul he believes belongs to Elizabetha in a new life. In the present, Jonathan continues shaking as he listens. He tells Dracula that he understands the pain of losing someone because he is engaged as well. He shows a picture of his fiancée Mina. Dracula studies the image and his expression shifts. He recognizes her and is convinced she is Elizabetha returned. Moved beyond anger or hunger, he chooses to spare Jonathan. He then instructs the gargoyles to bring him as much blood as possible because he wants to restore his appearance before meeting her. In Paris, the priest brings the missing portrait to Dumont and insists that finding the woman in the image is the only way to stop Dracula. He reads from a sacred text that explains that when a man turns against God, he may be denied death, but the curse could end if he repents. If Dracula dies in such a state, every vampire he created would return to being human. Simon enters at that moment and sees the portrait. After a pause, he admits there is a woman in the visitors area who looks exactly like it. Alarmed, the priest and Dumont hurry to meet her. They find Mina waiting for them. She tells them she was close to Maria and met her only days earlier at a party. Maria stayed near her from the moment they met. She seemed gentle at first but lost control at the wedding when she faced the bishop. Mina also reveals something personal. She often feels out of place in the present time. Even her upcoming wedding makes her uneasy, as if her life belongs to a different time that feels older and more severe. At the abbey, Dracula arrives disguised as a poor traveler. The nuns take him in kindly. The moment he enters the chapel, the disguise melts away. He produces the fragrance he perfected long ago and sprays it on the crucified figure inside. The scent spreads through the building. The nuns fall to their knees, overwhelmed by its effect, and soon they gather around him in a frantic crowd. He feeds on them without hesitation. Back at the castle, Jonathan finds an opportunity to escape. Left alone in his room, he pulls a blanket over some tools and drags them close enough to break his restraints. A gargoyle bursts in as he climbs out the window. He cuts the blanket and nearly falls but manages to hold onto the icy stone. The creatures reach through narrow gaps and try to pull him off the wall. One of them manages to strike him with a hook, and Jonathan falls onto the snow below. He slides until he reaches a frozen lake. A gargoyle follows him, but the ice breaks under its weight and the creature sinks. The others stop, unwilling to take the same risk. Realizing this, Jonathan forces himself to keep walking across the empty stretch of ice and snow. Meanwhile, Dracula reaches the psychiatric clinic, fully restored in appearance. With only a breath of his perfume, he takes control of Simon's mind and has him lead the way to Maria's chamber. Inside the room, Maria excitedly tells him that she has found Elizabetha. Pleased, Dracula allows her to drink from Simon as a reward. When morning comes, the priest studies his books and finds an old image of Vlad, but he is interrupted by an urgent call from the clinic. Dumont explains that Maria has disappeared, and Simon, now turned, has been tied to a bed as he struggles through the first stages of becoming a vampire. The priest examines Simon and sees the new fangs and the strong scent on his clothes. When he hears Dumont's description of the stranger who took Maria, he realizes Mina is now at risk. At the boarding house, Mina answers a knock and is shocked to see Maria looking healthy and calm. Maria claims she was released by Dumont and says she knows someone who wants to meet Mina. She helps Mina dress in nicer clothes and brings her to a hotel where Dracula is waiting. The moment he sees Mina, he is moved to tears. He gives her warm praise and kisses her hand. At his touch, Mina sees brief images of another life with him. Frightened, she pulls away, and Maria quickly leads her out to enjoy the festival in the city. Dracula follows from a distance as they walk through food stalls, sample drinks, and visit small attractions. They laugh at a strange mermaid display and pet animals. The night is loud and crowded until they step into a haunted house. The darkness separates them, and Mina screams when a skeleton puppet jumps toward her. Dracula appears at once and guides her outside. Later, at a shooting booth, he stands behind her and steadies her arms. She is hit by another sudden vision that feels real. As the night winds down, he invites both women to rest in his suite before the fireworks begin. The room is quiet. He and Mina talk, and he brings out a small music box and winds it. The soft tune fills the space and triggers more memories inside her. For a brief moment, Mina feels herself slip into the identity of Elizabetha. Shocked, she pulls away from Dracula and accuses him of manipulating her mind. He tries to explain his long wait and his memories of Elizabeth, but she insists that she is her own person. He ends the conversation by placing the music box in her hands. A moment later, Maria comes to take her outside so they can enjoy the fireworks. When the night ends, Dracula walks Mina home, and she is still smiling as they reach the door. Her relief fades when she finds the priest and Dumont caring for Jonathan, who is pale and weak. The priest tells her everything that happened to her fiancé. Mina refuses to accept that Dracula could be responsible for such cruelty. With no other choice, the priest tells her what Dracula truly is. He explains that Dracula survives on human blood and uses a special fragrance to bend others to his will. He checks her neck and is relieved to find no mark. Shaken, Mina retreats to her room and holds the music box while tears come to her eyes. The memories of Elizabetha surge again, but they stop when Dracula appears beside her without a sound. Startled, she orders him to leave. He moves toward the window, and she stops him, thinking he is trying to harm himself. Upset and confused, she accuses him of hiding the truth from her. He tells her that he has never used the fragrance on her and throws the bottle into the fire to prove it. When she questions him about blood, he admits that feeding is part of his nature, but promises she will never be harmed by him. Her nose begins to bleed, and he gently touches the drops before tasting them. He takes her hand and speaks with a tenderness that brings her past memories rushing back. When she hears the final words he once spoke to Elizabetha, she finally accepts that the visions belong to her. She tells him he is her love and kisses him. Their emotions overwhelm them, and Mina asks for eternal life. Dracula bites her, beginning her change. At that same moment, the priest notices the familiar scent from the hospital drifting through the house. Realizing Dracula is near, he grabs a gun and races to her room, but it is empty. He and Dumont assume Mina has been taken back to the castle. Jonathan, still weak but determined, says he knows the way and will lead them there. Maria finally reunites with Henry and acts affectionate to distract him. As she prepares to attack, the priest arrives with the others and steps in. Furious, Maria charges at them, but the priest fires and wounds her. She recovers quickly, knocks Henry down, and grabs the priest with the intent to kill him. Jonathan notices a sword hanging on the wall, takes it and strikes in one clean motion, cutting off her head. It crashes into Dumont while her body continues to choke the priest until it collapses. The priest, shaken and still fighting for breath, drives a crucifix into her heart to ensure she is gone for good. In Romania, servants carry a coffin into the castle. Dracula and Mina appear, and he guides her through the vast fortress. She meets the gargoyles, listens to the music from the box, and puts on Elizabetha's old dress, feeling a strong pull toward the past. Outside, the priest and his forces reach the gates with soldiers. They wait until the servants leave before forcing the gate open. Cannons thunder from the woods, and shots slam into the front of the castle, sending stones crashing to the ground. Mina panics as ceilings and walls break apart. Dracula tells her to stay inside while he goes out to stand against the attackers. The gargoyles descend on the soldiers and bring many of them down. However, the army's numbers are large, and they push deeper into the castle. Jonathan directs his group toward the basement as soldiers sweep the upper floors. Mina sees them closing in and locks herself in her room in fear. In the basement, soldiers fire at the coffin until Dracula appears behind them. He knocks Jonathan unconscious and calls him ungrateful, a reminder of the dangers surrounding the castle. Dracula moves through the soldiers with speed and accuracy, cutting them down one after another. More troops arrive, but he defeats them as well. In the turmoil, Henry fires 2 guns at him, but the bullets cause no harm. Dracula leaps onto him and bites his neck. With a swift motion, he shuts the main doors, blocking more soldiers from entering, and corners the priest with his blade. The priest speaks calmly and tells Dracula that he was never meant to take lives for God, and that human lives are not meant to be sacrificed. When he says his mission is to save Dracula, the Count answers that Mina is the only path to his salvation. The priest warns that she will face ruin instead. When Mina cries out from her room, Dracula orders the gargoyles to hold back the soldiers. As they clash in the hall, he clears the castle quarters of every attacker. He rushes into Mina's room and lifts her into his arms. The priest tries to follow, but Dracula locks the door. The priest reminds him that real love requires sacrifice. Ignoring her desperate pleas, Dracula stands against the door while she remains trapped inside. Guided by faith, the priest drives a stake through Dracula's heart and ends his long life. Mina pulls him close in sorrow, holding him for the last time as his body breaks apart into ashes. Darkness fills the castle as his power fades. The gargoyles lose their monstrous forms and return to the children they once were. Jonathan enters and finds Mina crying over the fading remains, which drift into the air. Accepting that her love is gone forever, he quietly walks away. Outside, the last of Dracula's ashes lift into the night and disappear.